My name is Mariah. I'm a CannaMom. And as you can tell, we're not businesswomen. We're moms of critically ill children. All of our children suffered a lot before we stumbled upon the fact that cannabis was a very safe and generally very effective treatment for all of the ailments our children suffer from. When we met, we had made the decision to try to change the laws in Florida, not knowing that medical necessity doctrine already existed. We met to bring all of our passion together into one group of moms who weren't in this for the money, like most people that we found between politicians and businessmen, but for our children and all of the children for whom this should be a first resort, not a last, because it is much safer than the pharmaceuticals that failed our children. So not only did they fail our children, but they harmed our children. And we felt that this great injustice was something that was only known to parents of critically ill children, which wasn't really fair. We all wished we had known before our children were sick. And it's our job to go forward and advise anyone and everyone who will listen that this is medicine, as most of our medicines come from plants. You have morphine being given to these babies like candy. It comes from the opium plant. It's dangerous and deadly. It's a respiratory suppressant, but that's just fine because it's FDA approved. FDA approved drugs kill our children, but what people also don't know is when you have a critically ill child, most of the time the drugs they're being given are not FDA approved for children. Our children are not experiments for people in the business of making money to experiment on. And that's kind of our message, is that when you're coming into this state, sure, you see the dollar signs. This is big business. But at the end of the day, this is about patients, people who really need this medicine. And we hope that with sharing our stories with groups like you, that you take that away from this to know and understand that while we're all in this maybe for our own agendas, at the end of the day, this is about compassion and saving lives. So we just like to share our own personal journeys and stories of our children with you as the CannaMoms.
My name's Annalisa Clark, and my daughter is 9. She has intractable epilepsy, and she was diagnosed at the age of 3 months having seizures. And by the time she was 6 months old, she was on 4 anti-epileptic drugs, only one of which was approved for someone under 12. And so as a result of that, she was still seizing, and the developmental delay and all of the other issues ensued. When she was 1, we were told there's really no hope for her because of the type of seizure that she had, and we kept searching. So in our search for the last 9 years, she's tried 16 different drugs. She's been on 3 different diets. We've done stem cells in 3 different countries, which we did see a lot of relief, but I can't keep going to China every 6 months. And then she had 3 brain surgeries. And the first 2 were actually, we saw improvement. The third one, though, however, was a failure, and she seized the day she came out of the operation. That surgery now has left her unable to walk, eat, swallow, and urinate and defecate like normal people would, and that's where the path that led us to where we were today. She now has a feeding tube. She has pins in her hips trying to hold those together from the spasticity caused by the seizures and the brain surgeries. We started using medical cannabis for her in January, and the first 5 days that we tried it, she went 30 days without a seizure. And we found out about medical necessity, as Mo said, and we immediately put her under the medical necessity doctrine, and she went 60 days with 1 seizure. And in those 60 days, she began to eat, drink, she tried to walk, she sleeps every night, and she smiles, and I actually saw my child come back to me in ways that I didn't even know she could do. So it's whole plant. She's not on CBD oil from a hemp plant. She's on whole plant. And so we stand here and we advocate for whole plant medicine for our children because we don't want anyone to say you have to take an Advil or you have to take a Tylenol, and that's the only thing you're allowed to take. And by restricting the type of cannabis that we're allowed to give to the patients, that's what we're doing. In the last 8 months since we've been on this journey with her, she's had to try several different kinds of medical cannabis to find the one that's right for her. And sometimes it works and sometimes it stops. And so the thing that we advocate the most for is that we have to have quality patient access, or patient access to quality, consistent medicine that we have to be able to try for people. They can't just take one and that's all it is. And I just want to make sure that everyone understands that this is about a free, open market so that patient compassion and patient access and quality is available. It isn't about just one vertical. And I wear these bracelets on my wrist, and it's all of the moms and their children. And I added one for my daughter last night. But I have one band that someone gave me recently, and it's a black band. And it's for a child that died before the medicine was available. And I don't want to ever have to have another black band on, and I don't want you to wear black bands either. So we really need to fight for the children and the other sick people in our state to make sure they have quality access to care.
I'll go next just because my daughter wants to get off the stage. So this is Dahlia. And if a picture tells 1,000 words, seeing her in real life should say millions. She was on her deathbed when I found that the risks of utilizing cannabis probably did not outweigh the benefits that they might offer her. She was diagnosed last May here in Florida with a very rare and aggressive form of brain cancer. Although the state can take your child if you don't agree to conventional treatment options, what you find when you start researching is that there's a very low prognosis for brain cancers in general. The type of treatment they were to put her on would kill a healthy 30-year-old man. And there just wasn't much hope. But even with that said, you're in such a state of shock. You don't really, know the things that you should know, that you wish somebody had told you before diagnosis. For instance, she went under her first surgery in the beginning of May. That surgery left her unable to eat, walk, or talk. At that point, I had very little hope of my daughter living out her life. In an instant, everything that you've ever lived for, your hopes, your aspirations, your dreams, disintegrate. You have nothing inside of you but the will and hope for your child to survive. We went to St. Jude in June in Memphis, Tennessee, where they do the best research for treatment of children's cancers, and I thought I was at the right place. But when I got there, I realized that those doctors could offer me the same amount of hope as any other doctor. Conventional treatments don't work well for brain cancers. They don't work well for many cancers, but it is our only option: surgery, radiation, and chemo. Radiation would have left her severely brain damaged. There is no doubt about that. Every doctor agreed, and the board of St. Jude came together and agreed with me because I said I would leave the country if they forced me to do that. The brain surgery had left her ill enough, and even when she did start to recover, she had partial right side paralysis. Our first week at St. Jude, I watched her sleep, and while she was breathing, her chest rose and fell and then didn't rise. And I watched her die more than once. But the 2-hour-long resuscitation after the last time was something nobody should ever have to watch. The lifeless body of their child being prodded, being opened with metal clamps, tubes stuffed down their throat, needles put in every vein in their body. She was rushed into another emergency surgery. They put a shunt into her head to drain the fluid from her brain and started her on chemotherapy while she was still intubated. The type of chemotherapy they started her on gives you canker sores from the tips of your lips down your entire gastrointestinal tract. So with the morphine from the opium plant, it's a respiratory suppressant and was not the right drug to be giving her, but the only one available, and the fentanyl, which is approximately 100 times stronger than morphine, having left her like a zombie and not knowing if it was the brain damage or the medicine that left her like that while she drooled blood in her bed and stared off and didn't recognize anyone. She had gone from this dancing, happy, full-faced, sweet 2-year-old to a zombie drooling blood on her deathbed. And I knew if I left it to conventional treatment, my daughter would not survive. I studied diets, but there's no dietary restrictions allowed. for pediatric oncology patients. Alternatives are not an option because the state will take custody of your child if you don't agree to undergo conventional treatment for them. So the only thing I was left with was supplements. Most of the supplements that are touted as cancer curing or aiding in the treatment of cancer are actually quite dangerous. Even the graviola plant has neurotoxic parts, and it's just not safe to give a child or any brain cancer patient. After hundreds and thousands of hours of research and so many supplements later, discussing with the pharmacist, the only thing I could come back around to was cannabis. Thousands of studies by doctorate and PhD holding scientists showed not only did it much more safely treat the nausea and vomiting that the medical community simply cannot wrap their minds around. They cannot treat the nausea and vomiting associated with chemo. Not only did it much more safely treat neuropathy pain than Neurontin, much more safely treat generalized pain than the morphine, but it also kills cancer cells. With that being said, most chemo does not break the blood-brain barrier, but cannabis does. We've known this for decades. So I reached out and got a hold of some doctors, some scientists, some researchers. I ended up talking to Dr. El Soli down at the University of Mississippi, where the United States federal government has continued to grow cannabis for decades, and he's the director there. And I asked him, am I imagining this? Am I seeing what I want to see? Are these studies skewed? And he said, the efficacy is transferable. And I'm going to email you that so that every time you feel you've gone insane, you've not slept for days and weeks at a time, and you can't remember if you're imagining this or not, you'll know that I believe 100% the efficacy of cannabis for every cancer cell line is very real. I then reached out to Dr. Meshulam in Israel. After discussing with him that not only does it more safely treat all these side effects, that it actually does kill cancer cells, and they use it on their pediatric oncology patients every day in Israel. I asked him where he got his money from. You know, it's a personal question, but I'm a desperate mom, and he was pretty open with me. My government, the United States government, funds all of the cannabis research in Israel for several decades. I cannot tell you, as a mother fighting for your daughter's life, I spent months in a hospital bed with my baby, fearing that she would stop breathing, staying awake for days at a time to watch her breathe while she slept, caring for her, listening to her cry out in pain. And then I had my breaking point. Came November, we had been hospitalized for so long. I kept telling them something was wrong, and they kept telling me it's just part of the journey. She was rushed again into another emergency surgery down the street at Le Bonheur in Memphis, Tennessee. But this time they saw on her chart that she had stopped breathing several times. So when she came out of that surgery, they could give her no pain medicine. So she had her skull drilled into, cut open, and devices implanted in her body. But because she was at risk for stopping breathing, no FDA-approved pain medication could be given to her. Morphine is a respiratory suppressant. I knew right then that compassion did not come first to anyone but me in the situation I was in, and that cannabis was a safe and effective treatment. I imported oil while I was still in Memphis. I was open and honest with her doctors, none of whom were educated on cannabis or even really wanted to discuss it. The pharmacist could find no interactions and no dangers, so I proceeded as I saw fit. She slept through the night for the first time in her entire life. I would never make this up. My job is to go forward and tell my story honestly so that other parents can know what we've experienced. That to me could have been a fluke, although it's a bizarre fluke, but she did that the next night and the next night. She woke up hungry and thirsty. They stopped threatening a feeding tube. She got taken off of all of her antiemetics for nausea and vomiting, which never worked. The atrophy in her legs started to go away as her will to walk came back. She literally rose from her deathbed in a matter of days. She seemed to be the happy, active toddler that she deserved to be. And even though we're in this to save our children's lives, Our first concern is that every day when they wake up, they want to be alive, because no child should know what it's like not to want to be here. And at 3 years old, to wake up in pain and go to sleep in pain, and wake yourself up because of your pain constantly, vomiting every hour on the hour, and these things we call normal. In the United States, people do not know. If you go spend a few days at St. Jude, you would understand what I understood. There are children dying every day, but they're dying in pain, feeling that the world is against them and they're being tortured and they don't know why. We don't have compassion in medicine today, and that's what we as parents fight for, is that for every other parent going forward, you don't have to be backed into a corner and watch your child suffer needlessly for so many months and years even before you're going to resort to something that the government tells you is wrong. Because politicians are not physicians, and this war on drugs is killing our children. That's Dahlia's story, and I hope that what you guys take away from this is that we as mothers need you, when you come into this state and you start working with us, to know and understand that patients should always come first, and this is medicine.
Hi, my name is Giselle Delgadillo. My son's name is Bruno Stillo. He's 3 years old. He started having seizures at the age of 3 months. He was diagnosed with Dravet syndrome at 6 months once we figured out what was happening with him with blood work. My son is 3 right now. He does not walk. He does not talk. He does not understand. And he's on multiple drugs. Right now, this morning, before getting here, I didn't realize how many meds he was taking until I had to prepare them for my mom to administer to him. And I literally prepared 15 different meds just for him for the day. And unfortunately, with those 15 meds, he's still seizing. He seizes anywhere over 300 seizures easily. I don't count them anymore because it's every other minute that he's having a seizure. They last seconds, but they're constantly going. The last thing that I want is for my son to leave this earth without me trying the best for him. He's on multiple FDA-approved drugs. One of those multiple FDA-approved drugs, it's causing drug-induced lupus. That's not something I want for my son. And knowing that the cost of it, it's a drug that's not even helping him, it's killing me. And right now, we need to figure out of those 15 meds, which one is causing the lupus for him. He's already suffering as it is with the seizures. Now we need to figure out which one is causing this lupus in his body. We're winning off a drug because we think it's the one that's causing it. What is happening to him? His body is reacting with withdrawal side effects. The withdrawals are more seizures. Did the drug help him? I don't know. But now it's causing more seizures because I have to take it away from his body. So his body, he's addicted. He's addicted to FDA-approved drugs. He's also addicted to a non-FDA drug, which is my fight as to why is it that a doctor can write a prescription, I can pay for it cash, it's not FDA approved, it's a veterinarian drug, and it's okay for my 3-year-old to take it. So he's pretty much the experiment here for this non-FDA approved drug. These drugs are killing our children. I have to watch my son every single day, every minute, because of the seizures. I have to watch him suffer. I have to watch him how he hates taking medications, but I have to administer them. I shouldn't have to. My first choice should have been cannabis. A lot of parents ask, aren't you afraid that he's gonna get high? A lot of media ask, aren't you afraid that he's gonna get high? He's already high. He's high on drugs, FDA approved, that the government would easily give him for free with insurance. But guess what? He's still seizing. He's still having hundreds. There hasn't been one day that I can say that my son has been seizure-free, yet he's been taking medication since he was 3 months. We need whole plant. I was told that for withdrawals, you need some THC, more than what's being approved right now. So we need whole plant. We need whole plant for him. We need whole plant for all patients. We shouldn't have to be taking all these FDA-approved drugs and we don't see any result. If you were to tell me today that my son is gonna get high on medical cannabis, but he's not gonna have a seizure, he's gonna eat, he's gonna sleep, which is something that this FDA-approved are preventing, I would be so happy just to know that he's gonna be high, but you know what? He's gonna be resting, he's not gonna be seizing, his brain is gonna take a break, which he's never had a break since he was 3 months. Another thing is, which I tell a lot of the Spanish community, they've come to me and they've asked me, who should I vote for? Who should I vote for? You need to vote for the person that's gonna help our children, that's gonna help patients, because we need good people in office that care for our children, that care for patients. Because I used to live in a legal state. My son was born in a legal state. But unfortunately, with the politicians in office, it's not really available. So there was really no reason for me to be there. So I came back to Florida, where my family is, where I had to support. I had to give up teaching. I have to attend to my son 24/7. He doesn't get any sleep because of the seizures or because of the drugs. We don't even know at this point. So we need to make sure we vote for the right candidates, the ones that are gonna be there for us, the ones that think like us, because our children and our patients are depending on them. This is the world we live in. This is how it is. And I just pray that my son makes it, because he can go any day. Seizures can take him away. Seizures and Dravet syndrome can last anywhere for hours. I don't want that. I want to make sure that cannabis is going to be the one drug that he'll be taking. He'll be off those FDA-approved drugs that are killing him, and that he'll survive, and that he made it here. He made it in this world thanks to Mom, thanks to the CannaMoms, thanks to everyone here, and thanks to our politician. But we need to make sure we go out there and voice out why we need this, and we vote for the right people as well. So now I'm gonna hand over to Renee, but just remember, FDA-approved drugs, they're killing our children. I feel like I'm a criminal just because I am giving FDA-approved drugs to my child.
So I want to ask everybody a question, okay? If you need to save your child's life or your loved one's life, do you think we should have to go to jail for that? Can somebody answer that question for me? Okay, so do you think that we should have law enforcement come to our homes and try and figure out some way to take your child away from you? Okay, well, that happened to me. I had Child Protective Services come to my home and try to make me out to be a criminal. And that this is happening almost in every state. Even in states where their legislative government, they actually acknowledge that cannabis is medicine, but still they want to charge these parents for wanting to or giving their loved one cannabis oil. So I'm going to say this. My son has epilepsy. He was once a very healthy child, and now he suffers from a rare seizure disorder. I never voted. I've never voted. Do you know why I've never voted? Because I really don't have any faith in anyone, to be honest with you. I don't believe that anyone has anything. It's all about interests. But I do believe here in the state of Florida, we do have some good people that we need to vote into office. And I think that the most important thing here is to know who you're voting for, because those people can literally make it a good or a bad everything in your state. So it's not, don't judge a book by its cover, okay? You have to deep down really understand where they're coming from and if they're going to be right for your family, because sickness, ailments will knock on everybody's door, okay? 1, we know cannabis is medicine. 2, we're not criminals. 3, know who you're voting for, okay? That's all I have to say.
Turn it off. There. What we stand for with the CannaMoms is we're trying to advocate and educate other parents as well as come to these events. And so there's some information out on the table about the CannaMoms, but as we move towards November with the election, we can't say this is not a, don't vote your political party because you've always voted your political party. And that's the one thing I hear in these rooms every time I go is everyone talks about the political party that they belong to. And this is not a political party to vote for. This is a compassionate care and an economic time that our state is in front of, and make sure you do your homework before you go to the polls.